Joining us right now, if I may, is the one, the only Texas Paul. I'll bring him over here in a second. There's is a momentary freeze, and we're good. How are you, sir? I think you can hear me okay. Can you
I
hear
am
me all right?
wonderful, amigo.
Excellent, excellent. Well,
Oh
welcome to the
yeah,
show,
I hear you great.
Texas Paul. Everyone, Texas Paul. Very excited to have you here, brother. I love your stuff, and we've never really had a chance to talk at all. So, hi.
Actually, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, brother.
Oh, thank you.
Long time.
So my question, and I'm like on my morning shows, we talk about kind of what's trending a lot of times, and then in the afternoon show, I do my slice ups, and the I have to say the chat gets very excited when they see you hanging around or if they've seen you in there. So I was very excited to talk to you myself. Um, let's start with sort of Ukraine and your take on like the current state of affairs in the Republican attitude towards the place and how I just find it pathological. It's very like it's so virulently against Ukrainians that it seems even beyond what Trump is comfortable saying sometimes. Although it's hard to guess what he actually believes.
Oh yeah, man. I look at it and I think somebody's got getting paid. Somebody's getting paid. Period. That trip that
Right.
they took over to Russia, the work that Maria Butina was doing
Mm-hmm.
had to have been successful. These guys are getting paid. There is no logical reason for these people to take the stances that they take. I mean, you got Farty Marge, the
Right.
elevator flatulator out there, trying to try trying to get in the NDAA to pull us out of NATO and stop. She's talking about stopping us from sending F-16s that we aren't sending
right.
to Ukraine. I don't know. It just blows my mind, man. It really blows my mind. I don't
It
understand these people at all. I can't wrap my head around it
right.
other than they're just getting paid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, during the Maria Butina thing, I think one of the primary things that we saw was um, the fact they were filtering money through the NRA to Republicans, and it became a crucial point for them. It became as fundraising went, that was the top in many ways. The money that was coming in to their super PACs through the NRA out of Russia was an enormous amount of cash, and got to skate by under the dark money rules for a very long time. And once that was kind of, I think, came out a little bit, people started looking for other avenues. And apparently they found them because I cannot justify how against Ukraine they are. It's one thing to think like, selling the no more forever wars idea, even though we don't have troops on the ground and we're lend leasing most of this gear, and Ukraine is going to pay us back with interest, just like the Brits did after World War II, which they just finished doing just a few, like maybe less than a decade ago. So I have to say, maybe part of them are just stupid. I mean, I like when it comes to Marge, like it seems like a missing stitch in her head, but some of them are selling this, Jackson Hinkle style, like they're rooting for Russia.
Yeah, it's insane. Well, you've got to go back and look at history. Even in World War II, there was a big presence here in the Bushes, Prescott Bush, man. They
Yep.
they were they were all in for Hitler and Germany. I mean, there's just going to
Mm-hmm.
be a segment of people in this country that are just on the wrong side of history every
Right.
time. And it just seems like that conservative Republican group of people, they just love,
Yeah.
pardon the expression, but like crap like Russia. They just love it.
Well, is
I
it?
don't get it. I don't understand it.
I mean, obviously there are a couple of. There's one area where I think it's clear why they like it, which is this illusion of traditional values and the appeal to authoritarianism that they like. They want a pit bull running the whole thing, and they don't care if it damages them a little bit as long as he barks at the right people. But I'm always amazed that they don't know about the gun laws in Russia. If they had any idea, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I I
yeah.
have I have my my we always joke that my dad's house is a ATF mistake waiting to happen because we're muzzle loaders and gun collectors from ages ago. But did they know that you have to like report how much ammunition you took out, and if you don't bring back what you didn't shoot, you're in huge trouble. Like, and they want that for here. They want the legal system that snatched up Brittany Griner. Like, it's not just for basketball playing lesbians who have a little bit of CBD oil on them. It's for everybody.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't.
you nailed it on the head. Russian gun laws are you know, I'm liberal as hell about a lot of things, but I kind that's a gun cabinet behind me. I
Right.
like my guns, but I am smart enough to know that as a society, we're just not mature enough to be walking around with weapons right now. We just aren't. We've got half our society that's lost their damn minds right now,
Right.
and the government needs to set a tone there. But Russia, my God, man, it's like, what is it? One long gun and one shotgun is the max you can own. You've got the
Yeah.
reporting requirements. You've got it's
For all ammo, you have to have a rifle permit for 5 years without a blemish, without like coming back from a hunting trip saying I shot 3 slugs and I pulled them out of the deer and here's the casings and that, and you have to to get a handgun, you have to have 5 years unblemished, and even then they're counting how much ammunition. Now, limits on ammunition, not a bad idea overall. And I personally believe, and as a gun owner myself and whatever, that if you can't hit what you're shooting at in fewer than 6 shots, you're either the bad guy or you don't care. And
yeah,
right? And this idea that you
yeah,
need a 60-round magazine duct taped to another one is
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know, I think a big part of it is, I mean, it's the rhetoric around it. I've
Mhm.
been saying this for a long time. You know, it's these people that
Mhm.
Republicans don't like to act like they live in a society.
Right.
They want to. They think that everything ends at their front door. It doesn't. What you
Mhm.
say matters. When you
Mhm.
say things like, "Well, I got my guns," I got to have at least whatever I can use to fight off the government.
Right.
That resonates throughout the society. That means that you're using your weapons to literally fight our government, to shoot people. That's what they're for.
Yeah, you're ginning for the day when you
That
could
rhetoric
kill
shouldn't be
soldiers
out
and
there.
cops. Like
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think? Like Ruby Ridge and Waco and Timothy McVeigh, like holding those people up as heroes is about. It's about killing cops and soldiers who are, by the way, only at your door. But like the Waco, what was lost in I think a lot of people with Waco is that they were stockpiling grenades. There was literally a point where they knew they had illegal guns. They knew they were kind of Ruby Ridge style. They were modifying guns for full auto and sawed off shotguns and that kind of stuff. And they left them alone because it was Texas. But once they started stockpiling hand grenades, then they're like, all right, we've got to do something about the pedophilia as well. Like that was the thing.
and
That
even and even then they were like, we need to talk to you, come
right.
with us. It wasn't you're under arrest for this federal violation, no, man, it was like, you need to come with us and talk to us. And I guarantee you, in Waco,
Hmm.
good Lord, man, I mean, the
Yeah.
stuff that the law enforcement down there will just I mean, it's
Right.
amazing how different that would have been. It's like Trump right now. Everybody, all
Yeah.
the right wingers are whining, he's being picked on. No, he's a freaking idiot, is what he
Yeah.
is. Because
Right.
if he'd have just said, here you go, we
Hmm.
wouldn't be here right now.
That's right. Well, again, this goes towards how the Zelensky call happened, which I believe he calls a perfect call because he thought he said all the crimey stuff. Right, it's perfect call, it's perfect, that he said all the crimey stuff without saying it. He winked and nodded enough. That's what made it perfect. And then Rudy was going to fly over and make the real offer, gangster style. Right, that was the idea.
Mhm.
And then the, so the after I think he only felt like he could get away with it because Barr had protected him from the Mueller report, written that 4-page paper, and he was like, I got out of this. They're never going to be able to come after me again. They're not going to be able to try to impeach me twice. All bets are off. I'm free and clear. I'm going to run this place like a king. And so he just started, it was his own bravado, his own idiocy that he thought, I'll do a do-over of the Comey press conference to try and kneecap Biden going into the election, and he thought he could get away with it. The same thing is, I think, true now. Like it's just his ego. If he'd have just, like you said, returned the stuff Now again, you and I think are being maybe a little extra charitable, assuming that he wasn't planning on selling original documents, and that the
Yeah.
Saudis and whoever he was talking to said, "We don't want copies. We want the only one or the original because we don't want to feel like the CIA or something is using you to get to us," which is entirely possible. It's still entirely possible. That's the part that I find fascinating. But yeah, I think he thought well, I can get away with anything now. I could just I can tell him to go screw because I was president, and they let presidents get away with everything when they don't. They
Well, it's
absolutely
the way he's
don't.
done everything his whole life.
Right.
That's why it's so dangerous. Why he can never get back in the White House, because
Yeah.
his entire life he has always done any damn thing he wanted. The way he treats women, everything, his businesses, the way he screws people, he has
Hmm.
always done whatever the hell he wants, even though it's criminal, even
Right.
though it is way beyond any kind of norms or anything. And he acted that way as president. He always went way over the damn line until somebody stopped him, until and he can't understand right now that this isn't happening like everything else that's ever always happened in his life, because everything he's ever done before, people have been lenient with him. I mean, they
So what
just
you're saying
stop
is
him,
you
but he
saying
never pays
affluenza
for
is
it.
real?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
So yeah,
absolutely.
you know, I do you find it odd as well? And this is, I'm from Kentucky. I'm sure you're surrounded by similar people on a family level that support Trump or like him and that kind of thing. And do you find it weird that they seem to be railing against quote unquote elites when this is a, Upper West Side tax dodge jerk from New York City who made, second generation rich kid? Like, he checks off every box for what an elite would
Yeah.
be. He went to Wharton on a wink and a nod, crap student, but manages to brag about, like,
But
do
you
they
know
get
those
that?
people, they were never sincere. I mean, these right wingers around here aren't really sincere in what they say. They're not real Christians.
Hmm.
You know, if you see Christian in somebody's bio, what's
Right.
the first thing you think? They're telling you they have biases against people. That's what that word means. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not legitimate. They don't really
Mm-mm.
mean they don't like elites. They just like their elites, you know? I
Right.
mean,
That's right.
that's why you hear I'm still waiting. Have you gotten your George Soros checks yet?
I have not.
Because
I
I
have
have
not.
not gotten my George Soros
I
checks
keep
yet.
looking. I keep looking under every rock in my neighborhood, hoping that there's a weird like debit card that they leave. Maybe because they're it's a big secret thing or something. So I don't know. Do you go to the lizard area at the zoo and they come out of a dispenser? I forget. I have to read my David Icke books. But I
Yeah,
but when again that goes to sort of the Mike Pillow complaint that I have is that one of the reasons why My Pillow was successful and why it jumped to the front of the line with other companies was that he wore a cross on his lapel. It wasn't about his behavior. It wasn't about his care towards
but he was
his
a drug
employees.
addict, and
None of that stuff. It was because he knew this particular crowd would go, he has the guts to wear a cross, and that's a gang sign to us, not a symbol of resurrection and redemption and forgiveness and all the other aspects of it that make it a symbol worth wearing. He wore it because I'm on team. It might as well be the T in Trump to them. It's just a gang sign. And
mhm.
and when someone writes Christian in their bio or a particular Bible verse that's like, eye for an eye type stuff or a Leviticus grab or something, it's really again, just like it's gang language. It's like you're on the team or you're not on the team, which is
Exactly.
the exact opposite of what those symbols and ideas are supposed to mean. I mean, all tribal stuff from a couple thousand years ago aside, that's what they had meant to many Republicans for decades, allegedly. Is there
Well,
a
that's the
recovery
difference
point? Yeah,
between reading the Bible and carrying it as a fashion statement. I mean, it's
right. Is that your Bible? It's a Bible. Remember that? That was Trump's answer in front of the church when he was holding it upside down, and they're like, "Is that your
yeah,
Bible?" They have a family Bible. I mean, old families have Bibles. They're sitting around. I have one. I have my original one from when I was baptized when I was 11. And I have my Masonic one, which is ginormous and was signed when I became a Mason and all that kind of stuff. Like, I have them, and I know whose they are, and I know which side is up. and he just goes, get a Bible. Honestly, they could have handed him a hymnal, and he wouldn't have known the difference. He would have just held it up like that thing, because it's an empty
He would have
gesture.
opened it up to 2 Corinthians and just
right. Yeah. I like both the Corinthians. It's so good, so good. I like
fighting number 2.
Yes, the number 2 Corinthian is the best. So, you and I, I'm sure, could go off on sort of the existence of and the well-trod territory of Trumpism for quite some time. But I also think, like, is there a remedy situation going on in the GOP right now? Because I see fits and starts of it. But there's a huge question as whether they can pull it off.
Well, Chris Christie, and don't get me wrong, I'm not speaking well of Chris Christie. I mean, the enemy of my enemy is still my enemy. You know,
right.
But he has no aspirations of actually being president. He is in this race 100% to try to save the Republican Party. Because if Trump becomes the nominee again, it's over.
Yep.
I mean, carrying an L on your forehead going into a race is already a handicap as it is, and then it's Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, and Chris Christie's trying to do everything he can. And what I love the most is that he's polling behind Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
I just love that. Chris Christie, they're the guy they loved because he was such a jerk, because he's out there trying to take a baseball bat to Trump's kneecaps.
Right.
They can't stand the guy anymore. But I really believe that's what he's in the race for.
Well, that's because
he's trying to save
no
the GOP.
standard. Right. There's no standard. They, especially amongst that crowd. I mean, we're talking about like Talking Points USA, CPAC, those kind of polls and who they're asking. Because again, they have to do these like secondary and whisper polls just to see what's really going on. Okay, but what if Trump isn't in? Then what? And then you start to get a real picture of what people either think. And again, like I said about the Talking Points USA thing, that poll where Vivek Ramaswamy was their second choice, where he got 50% of this. If Trump's not in, then who? He got 50% of that, while he's polling overall at 5%, is about screw you, Ron DeSantis, which is not, again, how do you like Democrats? We can fold if we want to. At any time, we can fold our second choice presidential candidate into our vice presidency. No harm, no foul. Even look at the Kamala Harris Biden dust up over racism that was the big, the singular, I think, weighty blowout of the entire primary season. Her sort of accusations.
That actually scared me. I mean, not much scared me going into that last election, but that scared me a little bit right there, because I mean, that I am more worried. I started the whole Ride or Die Democrats thing a couple years ago on TikTok, and inner fighting, that's the only thing. I mean, the wind is at our backs, man.
Right.
We have this. If we show up, we have this, but anything that can crack us deeply. And I'll be honest with you. Joe Biden is an old white dude, which means if you go back far enough, there's some unpleasant shit in his. I'm sorry.
You can swear.
You can swear. There's some unpleasant stuff in his background that from way back when. But hell, man, the man's evolved. I mean, he reads
That's
the room.
The point.
He understands the times.
Right. The point is, like, look, the what makes the Constitution amazing is not that 50%, slightly under, but 50% of the people that were involved in in signing it were slaveholders at that point, or represented states and areas that were slaveholders, because it was a much smaller amount. But that's the point. That it wasn't that slavery hadn't been gotten rid of at that point. It was that these guys signed a document that most of them knew full well meant the end of slavery as a concept, and not just like chattel slavery and the Dutch slave trade and all that kind of stuff to the southern United States, but indentured servitude, all of it. Like, they knew it would lead to one day women will vote. One day, like they were aware of this, but they made a change in the time that was not indicative of anything up to that point, but for maybe the Iroquois Nation treaty that lasted a short while, and maybe some Greek stuff a long time ago that was kind of a root of let's give this a shot before the Vikings murder us all. So they were they were not evolved. They
I
were
should laugh at that.
evolving, right? They were making this
Yeah.
happen. And it took a lot more than it does today. All you got to do today is vote for more good / less evil in the world. Just do that. It's the system exists. You're good. All you got to do is make these little, changes around the edges and slowly shuffle us, sheepdog us in the right direction, and we will get there. That's the way we're headed. It's the way we've always been headed. It's the way humanity is headed. And the only time we have a problem is, like you said, when we have infighting or we have externalities creating artificial infighting, which is the other thing I think we have to be on the lookout for.
No labels and
Right.
crap like that.
Yeah.
Joe Manchin, Joe Manchin, and then RFK Jr., who is this is not a Democrat, folks. RFK
No.
Jr. is not a Democrat. I don't give a damn what you say. I'm a Democrat. The
Mhm.
way I talk, I'm a Democrat.
Me too.
RFK
Yes.
is not a Democrat.
No, he is not. He is what he is a chaos agent. The fact that Jill Stein is running his campaign in and of itself should be the biggest.
I did not know. I honestly didn't know that, man. God.
Fucking red
Are
flag.
you kidding me?
No, it's the same thing. Look. This is how they actually make these things function. They take someone like Nader, who had a body of work up to a certain point, and they turn your strengths into a weakness. This is what the Russians have always done. This is what the Chinese learned from them post-Soviet Union. This is what Deng Xiaoping's lying in wait, bide your time and hide your strength. That's what that's all about. And they're not fucking around. But they know that they could not, and this works better with Democrats than it does with Republicans, by the way. They cannot just, part and parcel destroy your entire system and start from scratch and introduce a chaos agent like Donald Trump. They have to, on our side. They've tried it a couple of times. But what they often do is someone like Nader, who a lot of us respected, or even Bernie Sanders or Jill Steiner, the Green Party, not even her as a person, but the Green Party in general, which I have, internationally I have respect for. Nationally, I think they become an
tool.
They're a tool. They're an outlet for another control point for people who want the exact opposite of what the Green Party fights for worldwide. So they know this. They know they can't bring in somebody who's just, a rando. So Kennedy's history of fighting pollution years and years and years ago has some value. And by the way, if you'll notice, they were scrubbing his image through that stuff. That wasn't just out of the goodness of his heart. It all just came up. I've got to start doing environmental law, blah, blah, blah. You got to understand, he came out as this rich kid who was busted multiple times for drugs and all this kind of stuff. And the family was basically haranguing him like, look, we're going to give you a redemption tour. Stick to it and you'll be fine. And he did for a good while. And then when his real self came out, he went back to like anti-vax and, and the pollutants that are of highest concern, that kill the most amount of people. Ignore that. It's the little things that get you, and I'll chase it down in a stream and it'll look like I know the specifics of something, when in reality, ignoring heart disease and pretending that's a distraction while you go after the occasional infected stub toe as your argument that, like, I know the body and I know what goes on is either dumb or intentional. And in his case, it just looks increasingly intentional.
And I believe, to be really quite honest with you, and I don't mean to go all conspiracy theory or anything like that, but there's a strain of mental illness that runs through the Kennedy family, and I think it hit him right between the eyes. I mean, I believe that Robert Kennedy is not of his right mind. I really do. I don't think this is a grift. Right. I don't think he's doing this just as a con man. I think he's highly manipulatable. I think he is really off his rocker, to be honest with you.
Well, I do agree. I do think he's spun in that regard. I think he is spun of his own doing, and I think a lot of what you're talking about it's ego. It is we always talk about what a narcissist Trump is, when I think in reality he has low self-esteem. I think RFK is a much better example, and for that matter, Marianne Williamson, having worked with her and been around her quite a bit. These are true narcissists. These are people who really do believe that the sun shines out of their ass, and the only problem with other people is that they won't line up for the tan. And it's very different than Trump, who is miserable, hates his own reflection, all that shit. Like, he can't stand himself. He hates women because he can't believe anyone would sleep with him, because he knows how awful he is. And then if he knows he's awful, why don't women? And so any woman who sleeps with him must be, the lowest form of life. And since women will sleep with rich guys, that makes them like that whole argument. That's what goes on in his head anytime a woman looks his way. She's a prostitute on some level, and they must all be that way. That's how he views them. And that's why he thinks he can grab them, because he thinks everything's for sale.
And if you understand narcissism, you can just see it. He reeks of it. That constant, everything he does is to try to get somebody to love him. I mean, everything is
Right.
trying to get that salve rubbed on his bruised ego that he
Well, that's
beats
exactly
himself
it. I
up
don't
with
think
all the time.
I think a true narcissist, and I've had this argument with my chat many, many times, but I think a true narcissist does really believe their own hype. I think Trump's problem is he doesn't. He's got low self-esteem. It's chicken feathers. He's got, ironically enough, for somebody who's actually 6'2" and 250 pounds, he's got little man syndrome. And it might be because of a mushroom issue. We don't know, according to, don't listen to Stormy. The wind was blowing. Sharks were all around. Everything's small, and that the water was cold. But he believes, that he's a small person.
Well, it's
Yeah.
right in front of your face if you look at him. His dad was an abusive bastard.
Right.
I mean, he really was. I mean, he treated Trump like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and that's what you get when you do that to a kid. You end up with a kid that doesn't think of themselves as worth anything,
Mm-hmm.
and then you hand them a righteous case of influenza, and
Mm-hmm.
you mix it all
Right.
together.
Yep.
And good Lord, if you put him in the presidency, what is wrong with you freaking MAGA voters?
Right.
You put this man in the White House. I
Right.
mean, you take that chemistry that he has and you put it in the White House. For Christ's sake, we're all
Yeah.
lucky to be alive.
Yeah. Well, again, I think the luckiest thing about this is, quite frankly, how stupid he is. Because, again, if anybody smart had run January 6th, we'd be fucked. But
Yeah.
not only did he run it into the ground, he put his lieutenants in charge of it. Bannon, who is the world's sharpest butter knife in terms of the intelligence of the group that he is in. He's the smartest of that crowd, but still, that's not saying much. Him, Giuliani, and Mark Meadows and Roger Stone in that hotel trying to coordinate all this shit with Ginny Thomas's money and a bunch of TPUSA, filler. That if they'd had two brain cells to rub together, we'd have lost the country. We would literally, if they would have laid siege to that building for days.
And you know what's scary is that most people don't know how close they came to actually succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
If they hadn't escorted those ballots out, God bless those young ladies.
Yep.
And if they hadn't escorted those ballots
Mm-hmm.
off the floor and got them to safety, there's a whole series of things that could have happened.
Right.
If we hadn't had Nancy Pelosi at the time, a lot of people don't realize Nancy Pelosi saved your democracy, folks.
Mm-hmm.
If she had not bullied Mike Pence, because Mike Pence was, like a
Mm-hmm.
feather in the wind at that point. I mean, he was finding some spine down in that garage. He did not like what was happening,
Mm-mm.
but it was Nancy Pelosi that told him, "We are doing this today.
Yeah.
We're not going to take a few days off. We're not anything." Because if
Right.
they'd have got that delay, you know how close they were to that sunset.
Oh, they would have locked in the town. The ones that didn't storm the castle, with King Trump riding on his Shetland pony, they would have hung out in the reeds around the city waiting for their second chance, waiting for the
Mhm.
second shot, second bite at the apple. So you're absolutely
I
right.
mean,
But
they were only days away from sending this back to the states.
yes.
I mean, they were literally only days away, but a lot of people don't realize that. Had they not gotten that certified, had they not done their job, this goes back to Congress, and
Hmm.
each state gets one vote, and there were more Republican states. That was the plan. That was the whole jig.
Hmm.
They and they came this close, folks. I mean, this
Hmm.
freaking close. And
Hmm.
Hal, what you're saying is absolutely true. Had they not had a freaking moron
Hmm.
as a
Yeah.
president,
It would have just taken
and the
because it could have just taken that one little tip in the right direction. His complete ineffectiveness, both as a leader and a strategist, saved our asses. And now, granted, none of the other Republicans running at the time, including even Ted Cruz or whatever, would have found themselves in a situation where, if they'd have lost after being president for one cycle, would have done this. No, there was no one else in that field. Even granted, Santorum, Ted Cruz, all those guys, awful. They would have put people on the Supreme Court. They're the same fucking people. They would have put the same people on the Supreme Court because they all come from the Federalist Society. They're all on a list, and they got a goal. That's all there is. It's a cruise missile aimed at women's rights and gay rights and social programs. That's it. And so Trump did all of his wins during his time in office from a conservative point of view came from Mitch McConnell or the Federalist Society, either giving him a list or giving him a lift. And so everybody else would have done the same thing while they were there. They might have done it without mean tweets. They might have done it without being too loud about it, which means they would have gotten more of it done, which is kind of the other weird part about it. But Trump himself, because of his ineffectiveness as a leader, as a thinker, as a man, in his own way, was the linchpin that made this doomed from the start. It was doomed from the start. The cultural revolution that the Republicans were pushing, even going after Roe v. Wade in the way that they did, even though they had this temporary success, will ultimately lead the country to a depth of women's rights. If people will vote next time, and that's where we get to why I think it's important what you're talking about on the regular as well, is people need to focus vote. Don't get distracted. Don't get I'm not, do the TYT. If I don't get everything, nobody gets anything bullshit. And don't let the torpedoes like RFK, gain any ground. You heard his remarks. I would love to hear your take on his remarks at the Flatulent Fest that happened on the Upper West Side, that restaurant, the Nicky DiPaolo's Paoli's place or whatever, where he said that it was crafted to basically spare Jews and Chinese people. I mean, did it make your hat pop off? It almost made my hat pop off.
I mean, I did just to sit there knowing and that's why I say he's a freaking psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
He knew he was on camera. He
Mm-hmm.
knew he was being recorded. That person is from me to this camera with
Mm-hmm.
a cell phone. I mean, that was not a hidden camera moment. And
Right.
he's sitting there talking about literally this is targeted towards that old conspiracy theory that came out immediately after COVID. This
Mm-hmm.
is targeted towards white folks. This is targeted toward Africans. And it's the Ashkenazi Jews and the Chinese that are doing this. And just don't pay attention to the fact that there are 65 million people in China with COVID right now.
Right.
Just ignore the reality of it. But, it's this disgusting core of racism, and
Mm-hmm. He had
a lot of folks don't know what
mm-hmm.
an Ashkenazi Jew is. It's the Jewish people that settled in the Rhineland. The Rhine River runs from the Alps all the way up, it borders France and Germany all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
That valley, you had the monarchies at the time invited Jewish people to come up because they were really good at different aspects of a society, and they wanted to incorporate that into their kingdoms.
Mm-hmm.
So they invited them to come up and settle and create towns and cities and whatnot, and then spent the rest of the next few centuries just crucifying them.
Right.
But
The
that's
irony.
where the descendants, that's where Ashkenazi, they're the European Jews. It's who Hitler attacked in World War II.
Yeah, his primary focus. And I find it, never mind the fact that I think he fell back into, because I know he's aware that he's being filmed, and I think at some point, as somebody who, you know, not to toot my own horn, but when we go out, my family and I, one of my kids' complaints is that people want a picture. Everybody wants a picture. He always says that, like, "Oh God, everywhere we go to the mall, we go like they're gonna want a picture, Dad. If we go in that store, they're gonna want a picture." And so I at a certain point, he almost reminds me that it's there because it's become such the background of my life. It's amazing how normal it got within probably 5 years. By 2005, I was like, this is the new normal. But and so
Didn't that
being a
blow your
kid,
mind when it first started happening, though?
yes, it did. Well, I had a very specific moment. I tested it because I was aware it was going to happen because I was so preparing for that day. I went before I got Talk Soup. I'd auditioned for them for 4 years, and they kept bringing me back because they were always trying to screw John out of his job. And it's a long story. And I had long hair at the time too, and I cut my hair, and that year I got the job. It was like, all right, well, I get what you're saying. So, but I got the job on the week I got it on a Wednesday, and they were like, you start next Tuesday because it was the 4th of July weekend. And so I was like, okay, I'm me. Nobody knows me right now. I'm the guy who's about to get a big break, and I'm going to test something. So I went down to 3rd Street Promenade in LA, which is a big walking mall outside area. And I walked around realizing for probably the last time, even if I'm only on for a week, the chances of nobody knowing who I am or seeing me, even though I've done a little bit of TV here, a little bit of whatever, that probably no one would recognize me. So I walked around just fine. I did Talk Soup. It was a short week, so I only did 4 episodes that week, three in the Saturday show. And Saturday afternoon, I went back down to 3rd Street Promenade, and I walked out of the parking garage, which was this long hallway next to a restaurant that I used to go to, this diner that was there. I walked out. I stepped onto 3rd Street Promenade, the walking mall, like one step, and a guy hit me in the chest with his palm. He went, "Hey, Talk Soup guy." The second I stepped out there. And I remember in that moment going, holy shit, not only does that guy immediately know who I am, he doesn't know my name, so I have to fix that, put that on the list. And he felt free to touch me and actually hit me. Like he just felt like he can just fucking slap me. Like he just, it was a significant touch. I wasn't harmed, and I would not, like panic like MTG does. But I was very aware that I was like, this dude feels like he can touch me in the chest, apropos of fucking nothing. All of a sudden, this is going to be a wild ride. So I started adapting my thinking to this all the time. But I can't imagine being a Kennedy. You know what I mean? Like, think about that. Like, this guy either the cameras are always invisible to him, or he's always aware. And I think increasingly he's always aware that wasn't, like you're saying, I don't think he just got, like, oh, they shouldn't be filming this part. He's like, oh, this is the good stuff. And I think he wishes people would film him saying his most David Icke, Alex Jones shit, because that's where the money is to some degree, because he's not going to be president. So what's next? What's the gig after this? Basically, Alex Jones, the books.
So, and that's why I say, man, you're absolutely spot on, 100%. And I think that's why he's absolutely out of his damn mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because Hal, think about how hard you worked to get where you are.
Right.
Imagine if you had been a Kennedy.
Good Lord.
The fact that he is just literally pouring gasoline all over himself and then lighting himself on fire in the middle of Fifth Avenue with all the cameras on him, thinking that that's his way forward. I mean, Jesus, have you paid any attention to Elon Musk? I mean, next thing you know, we're gonna get RFK and Cat Turd together. It's
right. Oh yeah, they'll form an alliance with or RFK will be a correspondent for Tucker's Twitter show. But again, I gotta say that's kind of devolving. What's been your experience social media wise? You're on Threads, right? Are you on there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
I put a thread out this morning. I went to Twitter to check the news feed.
Mm-hmm.
and I saw one of the first things that was trending was Vlad. So I
Hmm.
naturally assumed it was about the Crimea Bridge. I got a question for you about the grain stuff, by the way, too. Don't let
Sure.
me forget.
Yeah.
Um, but it was Vlad was trending, and I thought,
Yes.
okay, something about Putin. Natural assumption, right?
Hmm.
No, no, it's some guy. It was I believe it was Korean. A Korean gambling site had spammed its way to the top of what was trending, and not even the for me,
Right.
just the actual trending. He was at the
Yes.
very top, and I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that could have never happened just a short while ago. I mean,
No,
this is just
because well, it's like what it took to be a hit record back in the 80s or the 90s when you were competing with radio stations and making them play it and all the complication of it. And now it's about like YouTube plays, and you can buy YouTube plays, so the payola doesn't go to a DJ to play your record and pretend people are calling in, but farms in India that just hit play over and over and over again. It's the
mhm.
same kind. That's all that's there. Every day I'm kind of stunned at the even the tailored version of what's trending has collapsed. And it's obvious there are people who have contracts with Twitter for promotion, movies, television, and sports, and that they have this kind of under the table payola conversation or a related, like, if you buy these, will boost in the algorithm your other shit. That's clearly what's happening. And so they're still
And
there.
I don't understand how, because Tesla
Mhm.
is Elon Musk. It's not it
Yeah.
is one of those companies that has that cross to bear. It is tied to an individual.
Well,
And
Twitter,
I
yeah.
do not
Yes.
understand how Tesla itself
Oh, I see. Yeah.
is holding its value. I
Right.
just don't. With all of
Oh.
everything that it's facing in the reality with its vehicles,
Uh-huh.
having to mark prices down to sell them,
Yes.
and then on top of it, you have someone who's obviously, I don't know what the right way to sum up Elon Musk is. I really don't at this point. I mean, I hate to sound like a
A
broken record, but I
self-involved
think he's a little
self-involved
crazy
dickhead.
too.
Yeah, self-involved
Yeah.
dickhead.
I
Um
do not understand how Tesla is not just
I'll t-
plummeting. I
I'll
mean,
tell you. I've got to tell you, and you're going to love it because it is so fucking Elon Musk. It is the most Elon Musky Musk thing that you've ever heard. It's because his charging stations, more ubiquitous than the cars, they became the standard for the nozzle. And therefore, the vast majority of Biden's system to put charging stations everywhere, a large portion of it either do direct contracts with Tesla charging stations, or Tesla licenses that technology to another company to put out the charging station so it fits all other electric vehicles. It's not about the sales of the car at all. And it's a meme stock with right wingers. That's one of the other reasons why it stays up. And he does, because he has so much money, he can pump and dump his own stock. So he can, anytime it starts to flag, he could buy some through a myriad of foreign sources, bounce the money back into his company, go, yeah, people overseas are buying it. I don't know what you American idiots are having a problem with Tesla for. And that's how he does it. It is,
that was a
yeah.
I kick Elon Musk in the nuts every time he screws up. I really do. But
Right.
that really was a brilliant move. When I saw that he had signed on with GM and Ford and everywhere,
Yep.
I mean, we're all buying into the Tesla standard for
Mm-hmm.
charging systems, and then he was becoming a nationwide gas station owner,
Right.
equivalent of a nationwide gas.
Yeah. And Exxon.
I did
Yeah.
think that was a brilliant move.
Right. And there is, the the charging aspect of that. And by the way, this is going to be a short-lived time. This is going to be about a 10-year cycle, and we're either going to get to maglev level charging on certain streets that when you pull onto them, your car charges as it's driving, or we're going to move to a solid hydrogen fuel, because they've been talking about this tape hydrogen system where you can pull these cartridges out and pop them in so you stop whenever you need one. But it would, conceivably the larger size of these tapes could run 1,100 fucking miles. So like even trucks wouldn't have to pull them out very often. It's crazy. So and you basically just trade them in. You take an empty one, you give it to them, you get a full one, and that off you go. There is no
That's
time
what I've
on it.
been telling everybody. They're like, Do you think EVs are going to last?" I said, "In their current format, no. What they're going to
Mm-mm.
go to is they're going to go to a hydrogen EV hybrid,
Yep.
like you have with locomotives, where you have a hydrogen fuel cell that's charging the
Yep.
battery system that's pushing the electric motors, because the
Hmm.
electric motors are so much more efficient, more, that. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm the choir on that one, my man.
Yep, exactly. So that this will be a transitional point, but he is making money hand over fist on this transition point. The funny thing is, I think for me anyways, is that he's losing money everywhere else because he's stupid. But the only reason Tesla is staying afloat and Elon Musk is staying afloat is because of government contracts. That's it. That is the primary reason, because even lining up with GM and all these other companies, because they were behind the eight ball in developing them because of their own issues, ultimately it doesn't matter. It's the government that is supplying the funds, the loan guarantees, and the future funding, the basically the interest-free loans to put this technology everywhere. And by the way, it'll be way easier to upend once it changes than gas stations. Gas stations, after they're done, are fucking horrible. The ground is, the tanks, if they're not like removed properly and all that kind of stuff, have leaked all kinds of shit into the ground for a long time. There's basically like a half-mile area around every gas station, if it's been there long enough. That's just, a minor Superfund site to a certain degree. That it's just gross. In the future, though, you'll literally have like the charging station things will come over, and it'll be like, the plug on a Mac that's magnetic. You're going to have a similar thing where they're going to bring in new chargers or new, whatever the pump of the time is, the dispenser for the cartridge for the hydrogen, or the hydrogen, in liquid form, or whatever that comes out, whatever they move to in mass next. They'll just go chunk and chunk, and it'll just maglev to the spot and operate based on, because hydrogen tanks in the ground aren't going to leak anything, but they're just going to turn air into water, you know. So that's the future, I think. But you're right. Right now, that's how he's building it. Now, going into the next cycle. I mean, there's so many things to talk to you about, so it's hard for me to nail down where we go next as far as. But I think motivating voters and making sure that they lock in and are focused, knowing that that SCOTUS and the rulings that we have seen, the lesson learned from all that is fuck around and find out on our side. And never mind what Putin's going through and Xi Jinping are going through, but an
Yeah,
anti-FAFO movement.
I loved your opening on Crimea and what was
Mhm.
going on with the bridge and whatnot. And the Russians are highly pissed off. I mean, right now, and you've got the grain deal expiring. Is it today or tomorrow?
It's
Today.
over as of
Today,
today,
yeah,
because they're not going to
yeah.
honor it anyways. And yeah.
My question was, when Turkey went along with Sweden, the negotiations that were involved there, boosting Turkey's application to get back into the EU again.
Hmm.
All of that revolved around, in part, you had the Ukrainian summit in Turkey, where Erdogan just middle fingered the Russians
Yes.
and handed back the Azovstal defenders. I
Hmm.
mean, that was, to me, I was like, okay, that's a sea change right there. That
Yes.
was directly a thumb in the eye of Putin right there. Do you think Turkey's going to stand by with some of what they said? Because they said that they were going to escort the Ukrainian ships
Yes.
out of Odessa. They said for a
Yep.
while that they weren't, because, well, the waters were mined, and then now they're saying, oh, no, we're good with it. We're going to go from Odessa through the Bosphorus. We're going
Hmm.
to escort them. Do you think they're going to continue to buck Russia
Yeah. I don't.
and
I
actually
don't think
do
they
this?
have a. I don't think they have a choice, because ultimately the entire economy of Turkey is sort of fucked right now. They are. I want to say it's like 120% inflation right now, and the Turkish lira or whatever is useless. So everybody's using dollars. And nobody wants yuan or rubles because of the limited trade availability for actual goods. Look, if you're in the market,
What? You mean they're not jumping into bricks, man? Come on.
no, it's fast. I everybody wants to be in league with the new BRICS currency, which will be tied to gold, which will not the U.S. won't be able to manipulate that at all, which
No.
is hilarious. But anyway, so the everybody in Turkey is using dollars, Because look, if you want to purchase guns, children, slaves, or petroleum products, the BRICS currency is right for you. That's exactly what you're gonna, but you're gonna have to convert it into dollars or euros to get anything else. And Turkey, for all of its history and the Ottoman Empire and everything that it's been through, is not interested so far in becoming the modern Libya, or or turning into a modern slave state like China, with the Xinjiang region. So they are
I've got to
going.
give a
Yeah.
hand.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
No, I've got to give it to Erdogan though, man. I mean, you talk about somebody that just pulled one out of the hat. I mean,
Hmm.
he was at the edge of being a pariah, and
Yep.
now this guy smells better than rose water. I mean,
Hmm.
he is really. I mean, this was brilliant. I mean, when he said, "Well, we're going to hold up Sweden's nomination until," really, he just did that to get him in the room, and we got him in there. I don't know what he told everybody. Those conversations were private, but he
Hmm.
walked out of that room. I
Yeah.
was like, wow, chef's kiss. That guy
I,
is.
I will say you're probably. I have a feeling you're right in terms of he has had more private meetings with Putin than anyone but Macron and Xi Jinping, who've had like two. Macron had two a while back, over the course of the war, and Xi Jinping has had three or four private, and God knows what they video conference or whatever. But Erdogan has had more power play meetings, real face to face, fuck you business meetings with Vladimir Putin than anybody. So if he came into there going, we're going to need the F-35 contracts in our country, and we're going to need support of the US dollar, and we're going to need this because we're going to back all the grain coming out of there, because if we back Russia, they're going to eat their way through Georgia and come up on our shoreline, which is what they are going to do. There is no, what the fuck do you think Ruskamir means? The Russian world. They don't. This is old school, you know, Germanic. We'll get to the Japanese when we get tired of killing everybody else, and that's what I think Erdogan, in talking to Putin, is worried about. It seems like that's where he reached that conclusion that this guy's not going to nuke the world because he's too much of a hedonist. He wants it to exist, but he's going to do everything short of it to just fuck the whole world into a cocked hat. And that's bad for business. It's bad for relationships. It's bad for yachts. It's bad for fish. It's bad for everything that makes Turkey have any value at all. Shipping lanes, color TV sets. It's just a recipe for, Armageddon. It's just everything doesn't glow in the dark, but we go back to the 14th century. And I don't think the Turks have any interest in that. And I think that's what he
Hey,
woke up to.
and when they were in Vilnius, you got to give props to the way Joe Biden does things. I mean, he is not
Oh,
a
yeah.
Donald Trump. He does not run to a camera and say, "Look what I just did, folks."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he doesn't do it. I mean, he
Right.
understands. He can read a room. He understands what's going on. And Erdogan was exactly what you were saying. If you want us to actually fight terrorism beyond the Kurds,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to need us to.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna need modern weapons. We are, and
Yep.
Joe Biden did the same thing he did when he was in Ukraine. He said, "Watch this." Picked up
Mm-hmm.
Lloyd. Yeah, I need you to call Goulart, and we need to make this happen.
Yep.
And put down the phone, and then went on about his business. I mean, it's just the deft hand, the quietness, just
Right.
make it happen. I mean,
Well, and
quiet
and also
confidence.
don't offer anything you're not willing to give, and don't Trump has always been this, like, always be able to walk away from the table. You have to be able to walk away from the table. Look, there's only one way you can always walk away from the table, is if you don't give a fuck. You have to. There's got to be a point where you don't care about the ramifications past a certain point. And when you're in business and it's a hotel deal, the stakes are really minor in terms of global impact. But when it's the environment, or whether Russia takes over 6 of their former satellite states and murders everyone there except women of breeding age, you can't just go, yeah, you know what? Screw it. Let them have it. And that's his argument. Okay, so he gave I don't know if you saw him with Maria Bartiromo yesterday. I'm going to cover it today, but I saw the little clip where he offered up his plan for Ukraine, his Ukraine deal, and this was his plan. I would go to Zelensky and tell him, you got to make a deal over territory, or we're not going to help you. And I'm going to go to Vladimir and say, you got to make a deal to basically keep what you've got, or we're going to hit you. So we're going to give them everything they want. Okay, first of all, we're already giving them basically everything we want. We're just doing it in fits and starts, but it's a meaningful, there's reason, there's method to the madness. But Russia's basically like, well, we'll just wait then, because he'll just delay it. He'll delay giving them everything, and we'll just take everything we take until the stuff arrives is ours. We can get Kiev in a weekend if Donald Trump's in office. So blather all you want. Because 2 weeks later, he'll be walking out of a meeting with Vladimir Putin, half bent over like he was just over a table, going, I don't know why Russia wouldn't want Ukrainians to just live in the new Russia. I've talked to him. He spoke very strongly that Ukrainians are now all Russians, and they seem fine with that. And if they're not, he was very strong with me. Like that. That's where I see it. That's where I see him going. It's never going to happen. Yeah. Thank God. It isn't. It is just not. But that was his argument.
What I'm trying to wrap my head around with this one is, what's the benefit for delay for Russia? I mean, they are going to lose. They are going to lose. The more
right.
Just the modern HIMARS, I can't remember the model number, the new HIMARS rockets that we just delivered that have the range to actually reach deep enough into Crimea to actually cut their supply chains off, to actually, you know what I mean? Russia is good. There's no tactician in Russia saying, we got this.
Right.
No one. What is the point of delay? It would seem to me that they could make deals now. Okay, we'll end this if you X, Y, and Z. If this sanction drops or this happens, right now the deals can be made. If they get their ass kicked all the way back across the border,
right?
What do they have to negotiate with? I don't understand. I don't know. Maybe I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but I can't figure out.
Well, I'll tell you exactly. I'll tell you the only reason, and this is why they wanted a peace deal, and arguably what their complaint about Minsk was because they violated Minsk as soon as it existed, and they were supposed to start packing their shit. They're supposed to get all military. The Minsk agreement was everybody, we'll argue about whether or not the fighting should stop, but the soldiers, the little green men from Russia, have to leave, and they didn't, and they kept doing attacks. They kept trying to salami slice their way across the north towards Kiev, and so that's what kept that, like the tankies and the Vatniks, the supporters of Russia, all forget that, the Jimmy Dores of the world. But the point is that they complained about Minsk because it was just a time for the United States and others to go, we're going to have to help Ukraine build up their reserves for when Russia tries again. And they did. We helped them, not enough, and Trump tried to hold that back. But we were building a strategy to get them on their feet as a democracy and help them out because they've been under Russia's thumb. Russia wants the exact same thing. Russia wants time to reload. They use 40, I think it's a month's worth of missiles in one barrage. And they had a stockpile. That stockpile is now gone. So they are now letting missiles fly right off the assembly line. They're not tested, they're not shipped, they're not questioned by the quality of the batch, nothing. They're put on trains and they're shipped to the closest to the front line or wherever they're launching them from, and they're just thrown at whatever, and they don't give a rat's ass what they hit. They want to hit civilians to scare everybody. They want to hit military targets to stop the other side from being able to fight. But other than that, they don't give a rat's ass what happens to them. So they want time to reload. That's it. They're going timeout. Do you see the Reacher series on Amazon? I don't know if you saw that.
No, I haven't watched that one. I'm sorry.
That's right. I enjoyed it. But there's a moment where there's like a standoff between him and one other guy where he's being driven against his will someplace, and he knows there's a gun in the trunk, but he's got to get a way to, get the gun out of the trunk, and the other guy's got a gun. So they they do this, and they go to the, like, they get a flat tire because he makes himself have a flat tire by sticking a fork in the tire as they're leaving. And then when he gets out to fix the flat tire, the guy is like, "Don't try anything. Don't try to hit me with it." And he pulls a gun or whatever, and he fires at the guy, misses him, but they both duck behind the car. So they're on either side. It's one of these face-off moments. One guy's on one side and the other guy's on the other, and their backs to the guy, and they're like, "Okay, look, nobody's gonna win this. We can't just shoot each other. But I gotta, I need you. You need me. All right, let's do a peaceful thing. So I'll lay my gun on the roof. You do the same, and I'll stand up, and then you can cuff me." And we go, and then he takes the gun, and he goes bank, and he just hits the gun on the roof basically. And the other guy rises up, and he just goes pow, and shoots him. And that's effectively what Russia wants to do. They just want, like, pretend they want a moment for, all right, peace. Give me a second. Look, nobody wins this. Let's all get together. Let's have a kumbaya moment. And what they really want you to do is stand up in good faith and shoot. And you know how I know this? Because they fucking poisoned people at the first peace talks. The first ones they had with Ukraine, they poisoned people. The second one, they had one of their old generals who'd been one of the sock puppets in the Ukrainian military for years, undermining everything, letting them know where all the gear was, letting them know where all the soldiers were placed. That guy was still in the government because Zelensky hadn't had a chance to bounce him, and he'd been there for a couple of, points. He was their deep state, and that they caught that guy basically giving their negotiating points at the second one.
Yeah.
No, you do not give someone like that time to reload, and that's all this is. And again, I think you and I both agree, if Russia wanted this to end tomorrow, it would. They could just get the fuck out. It's that simple.
And they're actually, and that's why I say it just blows my mind, because they would actually be better off. I guess they just haven't accepted the reality that they're going to end up being they're a regional power now. They're not a world superpower anymore.
Right.
And they're going to be the second rate regional power in that region, because Ukraine is going to come out of this smelling like a rose. They're going to be in the EU. And the best of everything that was Soviet was Ukrainian. It wasn't
right.
I mean, they're going to come out of this far ahead. I mean, you got Poroshenko that's already embraced. I mean, they're calling him an oligarch, but he tends to not be a classic oligarch. I mean, he's just a business guy for the most part. Ukraine's going to just flourish. They are. I mean, because they've got everything Russia has geographically. I mean, they're like a carbon copy of Western Russia. And then they're going to have the goodwill. They're going to be able to make the deals. And so Russia has to see long term that, well, maybe they don't. I guess that's it. Maybe they just don't see that long term they are screwed.
Right. When you have to, and this is the problem the Saudis have, I think, and certainly increasingly it's a problem the Chinese have, which is if you're a one-trick pony and the world is aging out of enjoying that trick. In terms of in Russia, it's oil and gas. In China, it's their labor costs have gone up precipitously, and their control point in the government wanting to have like a 50% stake in every business that does business in the country is not good for anybody worldwide, especially because they steal tech and all that kind of stuff. So nobody's buying it anymore and everybody's getting out. For both of those countries, the idea that you're going to one day, what do you have to contribute? What do you have? China could go back to being effectively a giant Taiwan, culturally and technologically advanced and fine. There's nothing wrong with the Chinese people that a little bit of Taiwanese democracy can't fix. But Russia has beaten itself into this corner of where, what do they produce? What in the world besides spyware and oil have they come up with since they decided to be a nuclear power, in the 50s? There isn't anything. They don't have anything to offer, and the Saudis don't either. The Saudis are screwed. They're running out of oil. They spent a lot of their money, and they're trying to do this in this 2050 plan where they're going to be a tourist destination, and yet they're run by effectively religious fanatics, which is like, who wants to go to Disneyland if it's run by the Westboro Baptist Church, and every day you wake up not knowing what the rules are, and I could go there and be fine. You and I could both go there and go, oh, yeah, no dancing today? All right, it sucks, but okay. But the big money oligarch, Wilbur Ross, Bank of Cyprus crowd, you think they're going to go to Dubai unless there's a second set of rules for them and that kind of stuff? In which case, like, it's, what is it? The World of Club 33 at Disneyland? I want to show you this before we get off, because I appreciate you being here, brother. I really do. It was really nice of you to come on. I'd love to have you on again.
Man. I'm a big fan. Love
Thank
being
you.
here.
And this is from Telegram channel, one of the many that I follow, whatever. This is a report from like China meets Russia. The People's Republic of China hopes that the Black Sea grain agreement package agreement will continue to be fully implemented, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said in a statement. The grain agreement is being terminated, but we will immediately return to it as soon as the agreements relative to it are fulfilled. Vladimir Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov. That's the state of affairs. That is.
I would love to caption that picture, because it looks like he's saying, "Your name is Reek."
Yeah,
say it. Your name is Reek.
You are Reek. Say Reek. I don't want to say it. I won't say it. Yeah, I find it, like, the jockeying for power between those two men to be one of the most hilarious, if it Dumb and Dumber on a global level, that I think few are starting to grasp. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, people need to go look at any economic article on China right now. Just go look at, like, a real one, not one of these puffery China's going to eat our lunch garbage things. Like a real one that goes into imports and exports and what they're building and manufacturing and unemployment and all the normal shit for a country. Go look at that. Even with and know the official figures are weighted in the direction to make China look great, and they still look like shit. The same thing is true in Russia. Only they're much smaller. They were never that big, and they rely on another country that's collapsing for their support. This is an economic and political house of cards we are watching that will be the biggest shift in world geopolitics since 1991. And the United States, quite frankly, we got it easy, kids. The hardest it could hit us is nowhere near what even some of the regular European powers are going to go through.
Way to go, Joe.
Yeah, seriously. It's nice. Voting matters.
And you know what blows my mind about China?
Mm-hmm.
Is they keep just pissing away opportunities.
Yeah,
they really do. People don't realize the power of social media. This whole TikTok thing, a couple of my favorite TikTok creators are the Chinese women that teach Chinese, different phrases. I don't know if you've seen them or not. But
I've seen them. I know them well, because when elections come around, they're the first accounts that start telling you which side to vote for. But that's another conversation for another time.
But there's some goodwill being built up towards China. I mean, I know the right wingers try to make them a boogeyman or whatever, but China is sitting on real estate. Yeah, some of it needs to be refurbed because it's been sitting empty and whatnot. But you've got an aging population in Europe that's very expensive to live in. You've got an aging population here that really can't afford our economy that's evolving into that hyper expensive bifurcated economy. They have this massive opportunity. I talked to a guy yesterday that's moving to Uruguay to retire.
Sure.
Beautiful country, beautiful weather. China has this opportunity. They have medical care. Chinese doctors aren't bad. I mean, they've got medical care. They've got everything an older person would look for. You have empty real estate. If you would just quit trying to screw people on exchange rates and the crap they pull whenever you know what I mean? If you would just cut that out, you could fill every one of those damn apartments. You could become the retirement community to the world. You could take everybody's pensions and dump them into China.
Well, the problem was that was the plan initially. That's what BlackRock and all these other countries were doing, because they were like, well, we can't buy it, but we can lease it like Hong Kong for 99 years, and that might be enough for most people, and we can always get out later. Well, the Chinese government put in rules that said, no, you can never get out. You can lease this stuff, but once you're done, you don't get to extract any of the stuff. If you build a building, you don't get to extract any of the worth or rent it to anybody after the fact or anything. And that's singular to that country in North Korea. You can do that anywhere else in the world. So why the fuck would you? And then with the aging populace, the cost of labor went up. Labor in Mexico is cheaper than labor in China right now. And it's closer. So why would you bother? You know, when you can open a factory someplace, you're going to open it in Mexico. The other thing is that strategically speaking, China only buys land in other countries through ghosts and LLCs and all that kind of stuff, only for military purposes. They don't do it because they want to, you know, all of their embassies are traps. Like it's just a decision. This wasn't true under Deng Xiaoping. This wasn't true under, you know, any, like, I'm trying to think of even back to the fucking 70s, like around Nixon. This is new to Xi Jinping. And it is permanent until the CCP dies right now, because he is driven out, arrested, or killed anybody who thinks differently about this. And that's, so they're done. They're just done. And they're never going to sell their real estate because they view it as real estate as a weapon. And they think that if you and I just bought a building over there as an apartment and rented it to people, we were really all spies, and they would surround us with, you know, what they call Wu Mao armyists, or, you know, army fighters who would just stand around filming us all day long because they don't trust anybody. And
it's that same stupid paranoia that Russia has. I mean,
exactly.
It's just that
and
same
it's based on
paranoia.
Russia thinks the rest of the world wants to attack it. And it's just like Trump. Like, I don't give a fuck. If you just did your own thing and went away, you wouldn't have been a problem. The only issue is when you make your problems everyone else's problems. Then I have an issue with it.
Yep.
But if you just want to be a fuck up, I don't know, that's your right as an American. But it's like the Russians have this idea that the rest of the world wants their land. We don't. As a matter of fact, everything they have, oil and gas specifically, we're trying to get away from as fast as fucking possible. And not even because of them, but because we don't want to be in bed with the Saudis or the Iranians anymore. And maybe, just maybe, after a couple of decades of us not being tied to petroleum and the whole market being laced to it, maybe, just maybe, the Iran and these other countries will have to behave, you know, as international neighbors. And so their cultures will shift back to what they were before oil. Because the Brits used to go ski in Iran before oil. People used to dress.
Yeah, Iran used to be a beautiful country.
Yep, but like Persian people before the Iranian Revolution were, you know, as European as anybody else, because they just liked what they liked, and they were allowed to like what they liked, and oil was what brought that. And the sooner we can get off that shit, and the sooner we can move it safely, because I don't want a billion people in Africa to die just because we're in a fucking hurry, but the quicker we can get off of oil and gas and make renewables a part of everybody's lives, the quicker everybody has. The only thing you can bring to market are optional things in life, because nobody can patent sunlight or wind or geothermal in their area or any of that stuff, or even thorium, which is all over the Earth's crust and very available. So you can't just go, I've got the goo under my feet, and if you need it, you got to let me kill these people. Okay, that's got to end. And the only way it happens is through us, and we got to do it in a tempered way. I'm not in a bum rush. This net zero by 2030 is a smart plan. That's the way to do it. You know, just, you tear off a Band-Aid, you don't tear out stitches. And that's one of the things I think people have to understand. But the sooner we do it, the better, because that's people are going to have to be nice again. That includes Texas. Texas, you could be Longhorn dickhead because Texas had oil. Alaska could blow off, federal funds and all kinds of stuff because they got an oil stipend. That's how it happened. They could be they could be their own island in a lot of ways. And that's why. It's a terrible standard. So other than that, I have no opinion.
I appreciate you having me here, Hal.
Yeah.
I appreciate you having me here. I really do. I've been a long-time fan. I've been wanting to get together with you. I appreciate it. Love what you do, man. I love how you educate your people. I actually model my show much after yours, a little different.
Oh, thanks.
Of course, a little different feel, a little different, but I try to do the same thing. Educate people, let them know what's going on behind the smoke screens and whatnot. And you're fantastic at it, Hal. I appreciate it. Anytime you want me back, let me know. I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate that, Tex.
Love the conversation.
Me too. I'm and next time we'll have more of a shorthand, because this is literally the first time we've ever spoken. So we'll we got the catching up out of the way, and then we can kind of move forward on topics in the next one. But thank you so much for being here, and thanks to Andrea for hooking this up and helping make it happen. That was really fantastic. Bless you for that. So I'll let you go. Have a great day, brother. And don't forget, I mean, everybody, I'm pretty sure everybody who follows my show follows yours, but follow Texas Paul and get on Threads with him as soon as possible, because the sooner we can kind of cut bait on Twitter, the sooner it becomes Parler and a lesson to be learned going into next year. Because the more, I think the more impotent Twitter is in the next election cycle, the better. And
tell me that's not what's pissing them off the most.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
Election plans were laid last year. They not now, not from now on. It was last year they came up with this plan, and they were going to use Twitter to push
control the narrative.
And
right,
yeah, and all of a sudden, Mark Zuckerberg went and cannonballed into the pool, and
right. That's I think, and the fact that it was Zuckerberg because Mike Pillow calls him Zuckerbucks and his anti-Semitic little jabs, and Trump hates him for some magical reason, and Elon Musk thinks he's going toe to toe with this dude. And the only reason Elon Musk has more money than Mark Zuckerberg, honest to God, is because he takes more of the money. Zuckerberg, for whatever you think about him, the money that he's worth in Facebook and all these things goes back in. He's got plenty. So at a certain point, he knows he could never spend $20 billion. So if he's got $120 billion, 100 of it could go into, this and this and this and this and this and this. And that's why they hate Bill Gates. But Zuckerberg is going to be the Bill Gates in 20 years. Understand that's the sales point, if they still exist, they'll be pushing, is that he's the guy who's trying to depopulate the earth and all that shit, because he'll be old and a tech billionaire and that kind of idea. But Musk is the richest man in the world because he keeps it, and also because they don't count Vladimir Putin, who hides all of his money because he only makes $140,000 a year, and Xi Jinping, who basically owns 50% of everything in the country, because So, anyways, you're awesome, brother. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. We'll set this up again, and I'd love to have you on in the coming weeks, and as these stories start to come. Zoltan. And hopefully at some point we'll do a face-to-face. Nerd Halen plays Texas a lot. I'm just saying. So if you're actually, anywhere near a gig, you're going to be my honored guest at a Nerd Halen show.
I'll be there.
That has to happen.
I'll come out and see you in California. I love California. And a lot of these Texas people, I don't understand this anti-California thing. One of the most beautiful states in the damn republic. I mean, I agree. I love California.
I do too. So
except for San Diego. I got a really bad taste in my mouth about San Diego.
Sure.
And you know what it was? Is I'm driving through San Diego for the first time.
Everybody dressing like damn comic book characters. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
The light would not yet. I mean, the red light would just start to go out, and and the green light wouldn't be on, and 6 people behind me are already
right. Yeah. The San Diego second. Right. You got to wait at least for the light waves to reach my eyeballs from the source of the light itself. That's only fair, I think. Right. It's the goal.
Everybody's told me though I am wrong about San Diego, that it's a beautiful city. I love Coronado. I told him I would come back and try it again.
One of the great loves of my life is from La Jolla, and so it's a good place. It's got its own weird issues downtown, and Comic-Con has managed to salvage it from itself for a very long time. But yeah, believe me, there's plenty of the rest of California. We'll get into that when you come. Just come down to LA and I'll drive you all over the place. It'll take us an hour to go to 3 places, but in between each. But it'll be worth it. So thanks so much, Texas Paul, everybody. Thank you, chat room. Give it up for Texas Paul. Fantastic. Cheers, brother. Okay, now there.
Take care.
Bye. Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
There you go. Excellent. Thanks so much, brother. Appreciate it. Awesome. That was great. That was so fantastic. What a lovely thing.